Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Matthew Swift, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Concordia. And it is a pleasure to be joined for this edition of Concordia Live with Jacek Olczak, who is the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer of Philip Morris International, or PMI, as we have come to know it so well at Concordia. Born in Poland, a long-time career at Philip Morris, most recently as the Chief Operating Officer, and of course, as I mentioned, now it's newly appointed Chief Executive Officer. Jacek, first, congratulations on your appointment, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here.
Of course. So at Philip Morris International, one of the things that immediately caught my attention when we began learning so much more about the work of Philip Morris is that you see a future in which cigarettes are obsolete. And I remember when your predecessor spoke at Concordia a few years ago talking about this. But of course, my immediate reaction was, well, that seems very strange, because I imagine cigarettes being obsolete would be rather problematic for Philip Morris International. Please talk a little bit about what this vision means for you as the newly appointed CEO.
Yeah, I guess when Andrei Kalantzopoulos, our former CEO, was laying down the vision for PMI, then we can see the future without the cigarettes, that we want to go, all smoke-free. Many people have received him with a lot of skepticism, or at least a surprise. How come this can come from the, if you like, the mouth of the CEO of the major tobacco company? But knowing what we know in terms of the product, science behind the product, the assessment of the product, it actually makes the utmost sense, I believe, not only from a Philip Morris perspective, but also from the perspective of, smokers. There is more than 1 billion smokers in the world today. Many of those people don't quit cigarettes. They will continue smoking. And I think we, come up with the product, which is vastly better. So it's a technology which is scalable. There is a technology and the product which is verified by the science, and, science overwhelmingly confirms that these are the better alternatives than continuing smoking. So I believe it makes the utmost sense that if you have a product which is vastly better than the previous product, you just go for the full replacement. And as I said, I think it's very good from the public perspective, from the individual smokers' perspective, and ultimately, obviously, from the company and its, direct stakeholders or shareholders' perspective. So I'm, very excited of, stepping into the role of a CEO, being a part of the core team of a transformation over the last several years. I've been in the room when we had the conversations about, can we design, can we develop the product? Is there a science to confirm my assumptions? I've been from the early days of a commercialization, and I was, in the room when we make the decision that this product should replace the cigarettes, and the faster we do it, there is the enormous benefit from essentially every party, every stakeholder. So I'm, very pleased that I still have a privilege at these days to lead the company, and, hopefully we'll leave all cigarettes, combustible cigarettes well behind us.
What a time to become the Chief Executive Officer of Philip Morris, both from a market perspective, but also everything that's changing in the world. You were born and raised in Poland, went to university, I believe, in Poland as well. But tell us a little bit about your journey to this point.
Well, I was maybe that privileged generation who, I started university when Poland was still deeply in the communist systems. There was still had the Berlin Wall. This was, pre-Solidarity movement. Actually, Solidarity in Poland, the whole movement starts being, very active at the very end of my, university history. When I finished university, all of the sudden, you wake up in a country which is free, which starts to build its fundamentals based on a democracy. You have elections, you have a passport, you can travel. The whole world gets open to you. And I was I had a lot of reflections from the time, how much you can achieve if you actually let people to express freely their thinking, their will, they act, how entrepreneurial all of a sudden the people are if they are liberated from the straight jacket of a communism, how you act based on the fact that you have an access to the knowledge, how many better choices people in Poland and many other countries which were liberated at that time have been a making. But as I said, just by the fact that you have an access to the knowledge, to the information, and individually we all can make a better choices. So it was really great. I mean, it was more than 30 years ago, but there are moments when I just think it happened, month ago. I mean, the time flies very fast, and I can confirm that the last 30 years of very much, thanks to Philip Morris, of my career with Philip Morris, it's just like happened, a few weeks ago. I mean, there are so many new things, so many new developments internally in the company and outside in the world that, really keeps you on your toes and, challenges your curiosity, challenges your thinking. I mean, how many times, we are confronted these days with changing firm opinions we had about the things which, we formed this opinion based on the facts from the past, and now new facts surface, and you need to adjust, and you need to make really the best decision based on what is the current state of the knowledge of the science, and act accordingly. As you know, last year 2020 we have essentially passed the first milestone that a quarter of our revenues are coming from a non-combustible business. We have a number of the markets, then more than 50% of our revenues are coming already from a non-combustible business. So, you get these motivations every day, to work harder, because the dream is coming true, and the dream is becoming a truth, is becoming a reality, and we observe how we make a progress, as I said, every week, essentially.
As the CEO of Philip Morris, you talk about these new products that make smoking safer, and it's hard to not immediately think about all of the cynical perspectives, if you will, from many in the global community as to the possibility. Many will talk about however one is consuming cigarettes or smoking, it is still harmful. How do you communicate at this critical juncture in a way that can combat misinformation, but also can address and in some cases maybe the healthy concern that certain people have?
Well, I think there are two key things into how to respond to this challenge. First of all, we do have to be very transparent about the product, about the knowledge about the product, science about the product, usage of the product, etc. And second thing is, I think, as always in the life, I mean, you need to demonstrate some degree of the empathy. You need to understand the other side. I mean, they presumably don't know still yet everything which we do know about the product. Not that many people have read our science. Not that many people are aware about the verification of the science made by the number of the state agencies, independent scientific institutes, etc. So you just have to go through this whole thing, and through the conversations, through the proper dialogue every day. I believe we're gaining more and more understanding that our visions and what we're trying to do makes utmost sense from, as I said, individual smoker perspective, but also from a society at large. All our science is accessible to everyone. We very much welcome scrutiny to our science, obviously, as long as this is based on, with the rigid, solid, robust scientific methodologies. We have to be very careful. It's so easy these days, especially thanks to all the communication channels, media, which are available to everyone, to misinform the public. The public, I do believe, will always make the right choices, but as long as they're really presented with a true facts rather than just an opinions, which might be, wrong interpretation, how they don't really take it, a science seriously. I mean, look what is happening even these days as we speak about efficacy and the safety of vaccines. I mean, on the one hand, almost everyone was looking in the world into the fast development and distribution of the vaccines, and all of a sudden we need to start solving the problems. Are the vaccines safe? Should I take a vaccine? Which vaccine is safer than the other? Which vaccine works better? I believe many of these conversations are really conducted in a very irresponsible sort of the manner, because we impacted individual people choices. Okay, I mean, the way they formed an opinions based on this, very often misinterpretations are really harmful. And, we need to take a responsibility for our words. So on the one hand, as I said, is utmost transparency of what we know. Obviously welcome the scrutiny of our science, but let's be very serious that any conclusions which we've made are really has to represent or has to really be backed on the proper scientific facts. We are very clear that our product is has been developed and is commercialized to smokers, to those men and women who otherwise would continue smoking. We do claim that, and we do say it very openly, that the best choice today for the user, for the consumer, is not to start smoking at all. The second best choice is if you smoke, you should quit. But if you don't quit, we believe you should have an access to the information and access to the product and a switch as fast as possible to the products which are vastly better than a continuing smoking. And yes, maybe in many circles, just because these words are coming from Philip Morris International, from the leader in the tobacco industry, they being assessed and perceived from the perspective who is delivering the message. But I do believe if you would remove the owner of that message, it's almost impossible to disagree that these are the best choices which consumer will have, which is don't start. If you smoke, quit. If you don't quit, change. And so let's have a conversations and a debate about the facts rather than, on many occasions waste the time. Who is the messenger? Yes, the messenger is Philip Morris International, but we are also the tobacco industry leader. And I believe as a leader, we're acting as a leader in a very highly responsible way. We know something about the product. We know that the better products exist. And I do believe as the industry leader, is our duty to carry that message to the consumer, to the regulators, to the scientists, and, ultimately, eventually make people making vastly better choices than a continuing smoking.
In February, you made a very powerful announcement. By 2025, more than half of your total net revenue would come from smoke-free products, putting the company on a path to no longer being a cigarette manufacturer sooner than you were expecting. First question, how did you, when this commitment was made as a company, how did the markets react, and how have they reacted thus far to this news that you're actually moving much faster in the direction of total net revenue coming from smoke-free products?
I think the market took this announcement as the very bold announcements, but clearly understanding that we have a right to set such a very ambitious targets. I mean, as I said, last year, we already almost crossed the bar of a 25% of revenues coming from non-combustible alternatives. So, 5 years forward, definitely there is a path to get to the 50%. So it is, I believe the markets would take it differently if we would set this, 5 years ago, when you had nothing, when you have if we don't have a proof of concept, if we don't have a proof in the markets. IQOS is now, our Heat Not Burn platform is now available in 64 markets. In all 64 markets, it is well received by the smokers. People really fully switching from combustible cigarettes to this alternative. So I believe we will get there. And, as the leader personally, as the leader in the organization, as the leader in the industry, I believe part of a job is to set a very ambitious but attainable targets, and this is how you can drive the change in the world. So, we said it. I believe we will deliver on this one. And I am very excited. We also added that in addition to the 50% of the net revenues coming from a non-combustible product, by 2025, Philip Morris should record the first $1 billion coming from a non-nicotine, non-tobacco products, when we're trying to leverage all the science, methods, and all the capabilities which we have built in our R&D, while initially being focused on developing the safer alternatives to combustible cigarettes. But we do believe they can also move the company into completely new territories, different industries, when we can very successfully compete.
When we would do a poll, for instance, if we were to do a poll at Concordia of our entire corporate membership community, ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues today would be number one. We've heard that time and time again from various companies. However, there is a population that views that given you are a tobacco company, you cannot be a leader in ESG. How do you take that? What is your view on that? And more importantly, how do you turn some of the frameworks that you've talked about just this morning into some kind of action?
Well, I would only agree with that view if we would only narrowly focus on the E, S, and G. But I think at Philip Morris International, we took these things very seriously. And first, we've been very honest with ourselves, is what is by far the biggest impact this company via its product has on the society. And clearly there is the product. And therefore, most of our efforts were focused on how we can solve the problem of the product first, while not obviously losing from the sight the other important aspects when it comes to the environment or the social issues or the governance. And therefore, I believe we're offering not maybe a modified, but adjusted version of a ESG by first focusing on the product and sorting or solving the problems where the company, as I said, has the most of the impact, while obviously also making a huge progress, tremendous progress on the way, for example, how we use resources, right? The carbon neutrality, how do we market our products, which is very important, the youth access, how do we, what is our approach to the diversity and inclusion, especially as the, big multinational global company like us. So we're trying to address all of these problems, but I believe if we address the problem of smoking and replacing the combustible products with alternatives, this by far will be the biggest contribution Philip Morris International can make on the society.
So let's, and finally, as last question, say we're together having a conversation in 10 years, God willing, 2031. Where do you see Philip Morris International? Have you delivered on a smoke-free future?
I believe yes, at least in a majority of the markets or majority of the countries. I think 10 years from now is absolutely fair to assume that you will have a first markets, then you almost will have to remind people what the cigarettes were about. And definitely you will have to remind them that Philip Morris International used to be a company who was only selling cigarettes in the past. 10 years is a lot, and I believe with the today's speed of innovation, technology, ability to scale up fast, I believe we will have a markets which will completely solve the problem of smoking, combustible smoking for good. And I wish that, every day when, people are judging us by our words and actions, I will also have a more and more growing group of stakeholders who will be willing to collaborate with us, including, regulators, scientists, etc., who will open their mind and rather, put the resources together, how we can jointly achieve that success faster, rather than, try to sit on the other sides of a table and, discuss the things which, frankly speaking, shouldn't be discussed anymore. I mean, smokers do deserve a better alternatives than they are being offered today. And, we never had such an opportunity of solving the problem of smoking that fast in such a meaningful way as it is in, as it, lies in front of us now. So the faster we grab the opportunity, the better it is for everyone. I am fully convinced. And I'm saying this as the 30 years experienced veteran, if you like, of the tobacco industry. And I'm so proud that I can convert Philip Morris, definitely, hopefully the entire industry, into the better alternatives.
Well, Jacek Olczak, thank you very, very much for your time today. And we all at Concordia are certainly looking forward to bringing people back together in person. I'm sorry we're not able to be together in person today, but in September, the week of September 20th, we will be back to offering an in-person option for the 2021 Concordia Annual Summit, and we hope you'll be able to join us. So thank you very, very much, and thank you for your thoughts this morning.
Thank you very much for also helping us by allowing us to use your platform for a communication with our, reaching with our stakeholders. I mean, it's really appreciated. You guys really doing a great work.
Well, we like to work with companies that don't just talk about various issues, but also do a great deal on various issues, to which Philip Morris has a long track record. So it's an honor to be in touch. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.